Welcome to Consulting Mastery, where we help B2B consultants master the business of consulting. I'm Carrie.
And I'm Ahmed. Join us as we explore the art of delivering outstanding client value, earning a higher income, and thriving in today's marketplace. How should consultants think about the recession?
The recession. You say that as if there's only ever one.
Fair. The current in air quotes, not yet proven to be a technical recession, but everybody kind of is acting like it is anyways. It's a long air quote.
It is a very long air quote. It's an excellent question because I think it expands, like it's not just about how you think about the recession. It really leads into how you think about anything that feels like it's potentially a risk. So, recession, it's a tough word, recession specific. I think, there are things that we can talk about, but I truly believe this does translate into how you approach whatever challenges come your way.
So what do you mean? How is it the same as any other challenge?
Well, it almost goes back to the question about, like, is it the recession? Your business, my business, everyone's business is going to face what feel like unique external challenges. But the reality is that although each one is unique, the fact that they keep coming at you is not at all unique, right? That's just part of the game. And so often I think what happens is we find our way through the one event. And then we set it behind us and we say, okay, phew, that's over. So glad. Now I can move on. Everything's going to be okay. And then we get blindsided by the next event, whether that is the next recession, if you've been in business long enough, or whether that is the next something else that comes along and feels like a threat. And so, I think there are specific conversations to have about, like, the reality of a financial recession and what that does or doesn't mean to your business, but also just how you take those things in stride or don't.
So just to play devil's advocate here, come on, Carrie, like COVID and then a recession, like I get it. Business is hard, but the last 3 years have been pretty damn hard, don't you think?
I
This is
do.
normal to you?
I don't know that it's normal, but I will say that if you are in business long enough, the cycle will be normal, right? Like the big event. Now, maybe it's not a worldwide pandemic. We can probably all agree that the effects of that were larger than a lot of other things that happen. But there are also things that we can't predict right now, right? We wouldn't have predicted going through COVID. I mean, some smart people did, I guess. But, whatever the next big thing is to come along is going to come along.
All right. So your message is, grow up. It's just another problem. You'll get over it. And then you'll live to find it to face another problem. And that's business. That's what you signed up for. Put your big boy, big girl pants on and
It
get back to
sounds
work.
terribly depressing when you say it that way.
That's what I heard.
Fair. But, what it's really doing is just pointing towards a general sense of resilience and how to develop that, because at the root of it, that is the thing you need. So whether it is worldwide pandemic, whether it is, recession, technically defined or not, whether it is something that just happens to your market, whether it is something that happens to you personally, the real trick is getting through it.
It's a really good point, because my fear for a lot of people is the recession becomes their excuse of the day, like the flavor of the week excuse. COVID was an excuse. And then, well, my daughter's going to college is an excuse. And I'm getting divorced as an excuse. I'm not minimizing any of these things on their own, right? But like, it's always something. And then the recession's a gigantic excuse being served up to you on a silver platter. Oh, you can't grow, you can't win deals, you're losing clients, your cash flow's taking a hit. Here's a gigantic, believable, empathizable, if that's a word, excuse. Well, it's the recession, right? So when you
Yes.
go home to your significant other, you're talking to friends, or you're talking to your team, and people go, well, what's wrong? Why are things down? You go, well, it's the recession. They go, oh yeah, everyone's struggling in the recession, right? And then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
You've already got your out, you've already got your excuse. So then the more you use it, the more it becomes real. Does it have to be that way? I think is the question.
I don't think it does. I think the problem really arises when you don't right size the actual effect of the thing. Because all those things you just listed, right? There are some real effects. Certainly if you owned a hotel when COVID started, like significant actual real consequences that existed that you needed to deal with. The problem is when you run a service that's largely online and you still decide that COVID is the reason that nothing is going your way. And so, the skill to build, I would say, is to be able to parse out, okay, what's the reality? How is this truly, truly affecting me? And how am I just blowing this up to give myself, to your point, an excuse, a reason, a way to back away from whatever goal it was that I had?
And I think sometimes people forget, recession or not, trillions of dollars are changing hands in the economy every single day. And just because, let's say the recession's real, at the time of this recording, it's late May. We don't know if we've had 2 consecutive quarters of declining GDP. Let's say we do. And let's say it's something really tragic, like 10% decline in GDP growth. Does that necessarily mean that your business can't grow, or that your industry can't grow, or that is an opportunity for your, you know, insignificant business in the grand scheme of the economy? And I mean, we're insignificant in
Mhm.
the grand scheme of the economy. Anybody that's not a multi-billion dollar entity is insignificant in the grand scheme of the economy. So just because this big, huge thing is potentially shrinking doesn't mean that that has to have necessarily a tangible impact on you at $1 million or a couple of $1 million or a few $100,000 in revenue.
Yeah, I could not agree more. And then the flip side of that is people not recognizing that often out of those difficult times, there are a lot of businesses that do better. There are reasons that people might actually want to work with you that didn't exist, before insert event here. If we talk about the recession specifically, um, you know, at the same time as this, the amount of money being spent is shrinking, there are also people looking for the right solution because they also feel that their business is at risk. And now they want to deal with the person that's going to help them through that. And so there's an opportunity often. And whether that does or doesn't exist for your specific business, people that we're talking to remains to be seen. But as the moment you decide that the recession is the thing that is going to now reduce your business, kill your business, make your life harder, whatever the complaint is, then that is in fact what will happen.
Yeah, but Carrie, my clients are cutting budgets. So I'm losing clients, and the clients that I want to work with no longer have the budgets to work with me that they used to have. So it is having an impact on me. It's real, it's tangible. What do I do?
Yeah, 100%. It's real, it's tangible. I, again, don't want to be, I've been accused of being a Pollyanna at times, and I don't want to, debate the fact that there is a true impact. The problem comes when you make that statement and throw your hands in the air. Because what you're saying is, because of that condition, there is nothing I can do. That's the thing I'm going to argue with you all day long.
So you're not
So,
advocating for um, ignore the recession and don't make any changes and hope for the best.
absolutely not.
You're advocating for what exactly?
I'm advocating for putting on your realist analytical hat and really understanding what's happening. Because the other thing we tend to do is we'll draw parallels, right? Two clients or two potential clients told me that they're cutting budgets. Therefore,
No one
Oh my
has
gosh. Exactly.
no one
All
has
the money
money.
is gone. The money has disappeared. It's not going to happen. And so there are quite probably some tweaks you need to make, right? It might be that you need to appeal to a slightly different avatar. It might be that the folks you've been working with are not the people you'll work with moving forward in the same way. It might probably means that your messaging has to shift a bit. Don't hold back on doing those things. And this circles back to one of the core tenets of everything that we teach and talk about, which is find out what's going on, right? Talk to your market, talk to your prospects, and talk to them beyond the point where they just say to you, you know what, it's rough, we're cutting budgets, because that's not enough to understand. So now is the time to double down on having those conversations, on learning, what's keeping them up at night? What are they worried about? What's going on? How are they looking at the current financial situation? And that's going to give you the information you need to decide what happens next. That's a very different active, you know, autonomous stance to take versus the time's tough, poor me. I'm going to crawl under my desk and wait until it ends.
Yeah. And that was the experience of COVID. I mean, we were actively uh, coaching and mentoring, I don't know, at least 100 different consulting businesses.
Yep.
I mean, over the course of COVID, more than that, but at any given point in time. But particularly, I'm thinking about when it first hit,
Mm-hmm.
because it was the first 2-3 months of the shock is really where a lot of the disruption took place, and then we kind of got used to the new normal. And I remember the conversations. I remember I did a training actually on the importance of relevancy, because a lot of people no longer felt relevant.
Mm-hmm.
Their offer, their service no longer felt relevant to the market that they were serving. This wasn't true for everybody, but it was true for a lot of people. And so if you're no longer relevant, to your point, you have a choice to make. This may be you today. Maybe your clients are cutting budgets. Maybe that's a real thing. Maybe they can't afford to work with you in the way that they used to work with you. Let's just assume that that's real, because it's not always real, but let's just assume that that's real. You're no longer relevant in the way that you used to be. You got a couple of options, right? Throw your arms up in the air, do nothing, and wait for the day for you to become relevant again. And it will come. It'll come. That day will come. No one knows how long it'll take, but it likely will come. Or you can fight the battle to become relevant again. And it's going to look different. It may mean a different market. It may mean a different type of client. It may mean a different service. It may mean a different price point. It may mean a different delivery model. It may mean a different proposition. It may mean different positioning. It may mean different messaging. It may mean all of the above. And it's challenging. I'm not saying change all of the above at once, right? But I'm saying be open to all the above. As the market changes, we have to change too. And I think your earlier point is a really important one. Change is the only constant in business. Yes, we're going through a period of change, but that's not new. Things have always been changing. Even outside of a recession, there's a competitive landscape. The more people get into your market and compete with you, presents challenges. That's change. So recession or not, COVID or not, the market's constantly changing. And our job as business owners, consultants, professional service providers is to navigate that change. It begins with, to your point, understanding how your prospects are thinking about that change. What are they going through? At the end of the day, you're in business to the extent that you can address the needs and the challenges of the prospects that you serve and the market that you serve. And so it may very well be that what you currently do no longer meets their needs of the day because their needs have changed. But what have they changed to? And how can you meet those new needs? I think is the imperative question to answer.
Yes, and when I think back to that time that you're talking about, right, that first, 2, 3, 6 months probably of of COVID, when people were trying to figure out what was going to happen and what it meant to them. And, after we all got past it's just 2 weeks, it'll be fine, and realize it was really a thing we had to deal with, we watched people kind of head in two different directions. We had folks that we were working with who really did just give up, decided they were going to wait it out. And then we had the other group who came back time and time again and had the conversations and went out into the world and figured out how to pivot. And for some, it was a much smaller adjustment than they thought it needed to be. And for some, it was significant, right? It was a full, you know, right turn from where they were headed. But the real difference is between those folks and the ones who, and we had a lot of conversations with people during that time, right? We were on, sort of full strength trying to help everyone along. And it was really interesting because there were some people that, regardless of the options that we talked about, regardless of the shifts that we helped them consider, couldn't wrap their head around it. And I think for some, it was because they're so entrenched in what they do. So the thought of making any kind of adjustment was just terrifying. For others, it was probably just the shock of the thing, right? And the notion of just, it'll be over soon. I'm gonna put my head in the sand. It'll be fine. But the people that were able to make the adjustments are still thriving now. And some of them went back to what their original plan, and some of them didn't. But what they all did was learn, infinitely more about their market, because they were no longer functioning in a place where everything was just kind of ticking along as normal. Now they can see the weaknesses that their clients have. Now they understand when something happens, like, where's the risk? And having that level of knowledge has allowed them, even if they snap back to exactly what they were offering pre-COVID, it's allowing them to do it in a much smarter way.
And that's the gift, really, of change, right? I think you made
Mhm.
this point right at the beginning. The question was, your words probably better than mine. What's the skill that you need to acquire? And the truth is, if you've been in business and otherwise positive economic circumstances and the economy's been growing, then listen, I'm proud of you. Also, wasn't that hard. This now requires a new skill set when your customers' needs are changing, potentially from what they were, for a decade. And all of a sudden it's changed. You need a new skill set. And that skill set is, to your point, what we call, in our program, customer listening. Ultimately, ear to the ground, tuning into the actual needs of your market, and then using that data to make adjustments to whatever it may be, whatever the consequences might be. That's, to your point about resiliency, that's how businesses last. That's how they go the distance. Name me a single business that has gone the distance with no change. Same offer, same price point, same message, same everything forever and ever and ever. Doesn't exist. There's always
Mhm.
change, and it's required to go the distance in business.
Yeah, and we're talking about that in the frame of a big change happening. But, an additional point that I think is important to make is it's the same skill that you need day in and day out. And so this isn't just something we're talking about relative to a recession, a pandemic, whatever other big crisis comes along. This ability to go out into the world, to have conversations, to really understand what's happening, that's the thing that's going to make you successful, whether it's a small adjustment you're making or whether you need to, completely change the way you're doing things.